So let's talk about how cells and tissue have specialized structure that is specific to their function. There's a syllabus objective here. So we're going to look at this by looking at some examples. But essentially, a nice analogy for this is to consider scissors. So if you have a look at all of these types of scissors here, they're all essentially the same structure in that they've got little loops for your hands and they've got a little hinge and they've got sharp bits. But they've all got very different shapes because they all do very specific functions. And cells and collectively as tissue, they have specific structure because they have specific function. So different body systems have different functions, so therefore have different structures. A nice way for us to look at this is by going through some examples. A couple of examples with the respiratory system. So of course the function of the respiratory system is to bring, is for gas exchange, is to bring gases down through the trachea and into the lungs. So firstly we're going to look at the trachea here. So the trachea lining is lined with epithelial cells that do two things. First of all, they secrete mucus, and they also have cilia to create what we call a mucociliary escalator that actually brings that mucus and any dust and debris up into the mouth and the nose for clearance. So these are specialised cells with specialised structure. Not only do they excrete mucus, but they also have cilia. And these line the trachea. And that's what we can see here. These are the specialised columnar epithelium with the cilia. Now, if we look back, so we've got our glands here that are producing the mucus. And then if we go even further back here, we're looking at this stuff called hyaline cartilage. And this has got a very specific function as well because it forms these cartilaginous rings, a little bit like in a vacuum cleaner tube, that if you didn't have that, when you suck with the vacuum cleaner, the tube would actually compress. So the rings hold it open exactly the same way in the trachea. So these are very specific cells, or very specific, so these are very specific cells and specific tissue that provide these specific functions. And if we have a look down in the alveolus, which is the functional unit of range, we'll see that they have a very large surface area. So you can see it's all these white parts are where the air is. So we've got our lumen here, which is the tube, and then it opens up into the alveolus. So a couple of specific things we can see. They have a large surface area. It looks like grapes, doesn't it? They have a really large surface area. The surface is moist for gas exchange. The surface is only one cell layer thick to allow for gas exchange to occur. And of course we've got one free edge that's exposed to the gas for gas exchange. Also, it's wrapped with with blood vessels. So it's highly vascular for that gas exchange. So there's some specific examples from the respiratory system. In the digestive system, this is the small intestine, and again it's got a very large surface area. These cells here are again epithelial cells, and they have little hairs on them which were called microvilli. It's called a brush border, and it captures all the food as it goes past, or the nutrients to absorb them. And if we zoom out a little bit, we see that this is like one area here of a larger villus, which is the finger-like projections of the small intestine. So this is the tissue, and these are the cells. So the tissue produces these finger-like projections that again increase the surface area really significantly. One layer thick, so it's easy for the nutrients to absorb across. That's highly vascular to take those nutrients through into the blood. And again, we've got this free edge that's exposed to the nutrients. So the muscular system involves tissue that's contractile. So muscles move, so skeletal muscles move joints and move bones by contracting and actually get shorter. So that's what moves the joint when these contractile units contract and pull the muscle closer. And so you can see that the tissue is arranged with these contractile elements. Another thing that's really important is that there's loads of mitochondria because it's highly energetic. And there's non-contractile units as well because, of course, the muscle belly needs to attach to tendons. Of course, it's not just about animals. Plants also have very specific tissue and very specific cells as well. So if you have a look at the leaf, this is a cross-section of the leaf, and we can see that we have the top layer is called the cuticle, and that's waterproof, but it's also clear to allow as much light to go through as possible. Then we have this epidermis, which is really flat. It doesn't have organelles again, so it's really so it's transparent to let as much light in as possible. Then we have this palisade layer that's up like columns, vertical columns, and this is where we have our chloroplasts. So we've got a really large surface area for photosynthesis to be able to capture the light in these cells. Now, if we go lower down here, we have this palisade layer, and you can see that and we call it spongy palisade, and you can see it's got all these air spaces, and that's to support gas exchange. And then, of course, we've got these stoma at the bottom for gas exchange. So you can see that the structure of the tissue of the leaf is all to support photosynthesis. And then if you have a look at the chloroplast, you can see that it has these stacks as well. And these stacks, again, increase that surface area for photosynthesis. So not only do we have specialized organelles, but we've also got specialized cells and specialized tissue to be able to achieve the specific purpose or specific function of those organelles, cells, and tissues.